Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Welcome back to Spanish Lessons with Professor Jason. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about using the interrogative forms que and cuál, as well as the plural cuáles, right? The problem we have here is similar to the confusion surrounding the prepositions por and para and the verbs ser and estar, basically meaning that lots of people are unsure which form to use. Now that's because you might have been taught that que generally means what, whereas cuál means which. And sometimes that's true, but it doesn't take long to discover that things aren't quite always that simple. Part of the confusion between que and cuál comes from the fact that although we are often taught that que means what and cuál means which, in Spanish, sometimes que is used where in English the translation might be which, and the converse is also true, or the inverse, meaning that sometimes in Spanish when we use cuál, the English translation would be what, all right? Now, adding to that confusion is the fact that in English, the distinction between que and cuál is not a very rigid one, okay? So sometimes these forms are used interchangeably, right? For example, I might ask, what is the best approach, or which is the best approach, and it really doesn't have a huge difference in meaning, okay? So it turns out that simply relying on the idea that que means what and cuál means which is not a very dependable guide to proper, correct, or idiomatic usage in Spanish. Okay, that's the problem. Now, luckily, I think I can break this down for you in a way that will make sense and hopefully be easier to remember and to put into use correctly. As usual, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present some basic guidelines and group a bunch of examples with each guideline, okay, or with each rule. Ideally, you're not focusing on memorizing the rule, right? Unless that works for you, unless rules work and you can remember them and implement them correctly. What you're going to want to do, a better strategy, is to focus on the examples, how they're grouped together, and go over them plenty of times so that when you need to use these structures, que and cuál, these interrogatives, one direction or the other is going to seem more intuitive because those examples are in the back of your mind. So that's sort of the method here, the approach that I hope you'll take. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin by taking a closer look at one of the simpler types of questions involving the interrogative que. All right, you can see on this side we have que as what? When asking for definitions, explanations, or clarifications, que is the preferred interrogative form. This usage is the least problematic since in all such cases, que would be translated into English as what? Let's look at the examples. First, we're asking for a definition. ¿Qué es el existencialismo? What is existentialism? Or, ¿qué son los créditos de carbón? What are carbon credits? ¿Qué fue eso? In these cases, we're asking for a definition, an identification. Okay, ¿qué fue eso? What was that? ¿Qué quieres que haga? What do you want me to do? Explanation, clarification. ¿Qué vamos a beber? What are we going to drink? ¿Qué quiere decir defenestrar? ¿Qué quiere decir defenestrar? What does defenestrar mean? I'm going to let you look that one up. It's an interesting word. All right? All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. On this slide, we have some uses of cuál, and a key to making the correct choice between que and cuál is the presence or the absence of a form of the verb ser. So pay attention, we're going to have a form like es or son. Okay, now except when explicitly asking for a definition, as we saw in the example, ¿qué es el existencialismo?, cuál tends to be used whenever a form of the verb ser, such as es, son, fue, fueron, etc., or a preposition, usually de, comes before the noun. You're going to see this in these examples here. Whether or not a choice between alternatives is clearly implied. Now notice that in some of these cases, cuál would also be translated or could be translated as what or even when, as in the first example. So let's take a look at these examples. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? When is today's date? And remember, the key to using cuál here is the form of the verb ser, es, son, etc. ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? What is your phone number? And again, look at the translation is actually what. ¿Cuál es el problema aquí? What is the problem here? What is the problem? I guess the slide has a typo. What is the problem here? ¿Cuáles son los mejores restaurantes? Now here, we're getting closer to implying a selection. Which are the best restaurants? But we might say, what are the best restaurants? ¿Cuáles son los mejores restaurantes? The thing is that we're going to use cuáles because we have the form of ser, son. ¿Cuál es la solución más adecuada? Which is the most adequate solution? Could say what. ¿Cuál de estos videos quieres alquilar? Which of these videos do you want to rent? ¿Cuál de estos videos quieres alquilar? I put this example because we have the preposition de. Okay, so we also use cuál before the preposition de. Moving on to the next slide, we look at que. We're back to que, but here we're using que when there is some type of a selection implied. Okay, so when not using a form of the verb ser, as we saw on the previous slide, and the issue involves a choice among a relatively wide range of options, sort of an open-ended range of options, que tends to be used instead of cuál. Notice that in some or most of these cases, que would tend to be translated as what. Okay, so look at this, the examples on this slide. ¿Qué programa usas para navegar por Internet? ¿Qué programa usas para navegar por Internet? What program do you use to browse the web? Or, what instruments do you play? ¿Qué instrumentos tocas? ¿Qué instrumentos tocas? What flavor of ice cream does Martín like? ¿Qué sabor de helado le gusta a Martín? ¿Qué sabor de helado le gusta a Martín? Or, what color did you paint your room? ¿De qué color pintaste tu cuarto? ¿De qué color pintaste tu cuarto? Okay, so on that slide, we see que being used as when there's a selection implied of a relatively open-ended choice of options, and there's no form of the verb ser before the noun. Now look at the next slide. What we see here are more of the same, but in these cases, you could say that perhaps there's a more limited or restricted number of options. You can imagine a scenario where that would be true. So perhaps these would be translated as what, perhaps as which, depending. So, ¿qué vestido vas a llevar? ¿Qué vestido vas a llevar? What or which dress are you going to wear? ¿Qué auto deberíamos comprar? What car should we buy? Or, which car should we buy? ¿A qué playa van ustedes el sábado? What or which beach are you going to on Saturday? ¿Qué clases tienes hoy? What classes do you have today? Now I've used que in each of these examples because we don't have the form of the verb ser. This is a general rule, but you may hear some speakers using cuál in these types of cases as well, particularly when the participants in the exchange are aware of a smaller range of alternatives. Say the girl only has 3 dresses. ¿Cuál vestido vas a llevar? Okay, so sometimes using que would imply a less restricted range of options, while using cuál might suggest a more limited choice. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, here we're back to cuál. And finally, cuál is the preferred form for framing choices among alternatives when the noun in question is not explicitly mentioned. Okay, so look at the examples on this slide. The noun is missing. It might be inferred. It could have been mentioned previously in the conversation, right? So if we're talking about rental cars, for example, which one do you want? ¿Cuál quiere usted? ¿Cuál quiere usted? Or we're talking about him buying a CD. ¿Cuál compró? ¿Cuál compró? We're not mentioning the CD. Or we're talking about a class about different literary writers, different authors. ¿Cuáles estudiaron ustedes? ¿Cuáles estudiaron ustedes? Again, without mentioning the authors. There's a girl who's dating a bunch of guys. ¿Cuál va a escoger? Me pregunto, ¿cuál va a escoger? Which one is she going to choose? Or you're talking about the results of a study. ¿Cuáles te preocupan más? ¿Cuáles te preocupan más? Which ones concern you the most? Or you're selecting a puppy, right? And the person selling or giving the dogs away might say, ¿Con cuál te quedas? Which one are you going to keep, right? ¿Con cuál? Not mentioning the puppy. ¿Con cuál te quedas? Okay, now let's see how well you can apply these guidelines and remember the examples that we've just reviewed, okay? I have a little quiz prepared on the next slide. You're going to fill in the blanks in the questions using the correct interrogative form, either que, cuál, or the plural cuáles. All right, here we go. Here's that slide. All right, so number 1 is asking, what is happiness, really? It's asking for, hint, hint, a definition or a clarification. Number 2, what are you going to do today? What are you going to do today? Number 3 would be asking, what movie are we going to see? Or, which movie are we going to see? Okay. Number 4, excuse me. What is your address? Dirección. What is your address? Number 5. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Number 6, we might be talking about books. Which one did you read? Which one did you read? Number 7, what restaurants do you go to? What restaurants do you go to? Or which restaurants do you go to? Okay. Number 8, which ones are your kids? Which ones are your children? Number 9, which is the best brand? La mejor marca. Which is the best brand? Number 10, which of all the choices, could be cars, right? Which of all of them do you like the most? Notice there's a preposition. Okay, so in these, we're looking for things like the absence or presence of a form of the verb ser or a preposition, right? The absence or presence of the actual noun being referred to, things like that. Go back and look at the examples, pause the video if you need a little bit more time on the quiz, and go ahead and restart the video when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, you've gone on, so I assume that you've done the quiz and you're ready to look at those answers. Okay, here comes the slide with the answers to the questions on the quiz. So number 1 would be, ¿qué es la felicidad realmente? ¿Qué es? Because we're asking for a definition, an explanation, etc. Number 2, ¿qué vas a hacer hoy? ¿Qué vas a hacer hoy? Number 3, ¿qué película vamos a ver? ¿Qué película vamos a ver? We're using qué, not cuál. We don't have a form of the verb ser or a preposition or something like that. ¿Qué película vamos a ver? Now you could use cuál if you're talking about a reduced or restricted number of alternatives. If there's 3 DVDs on the counter, ¿cuál vamos a ver? Right? Number 4, ¿cuál es tu dirección? ¿Cuál es tu dirección? The reason, we have a form of the verb ser. It's always going to be cuál. Number 5, ¿de qué tienes miedo? What? ¿De qué tienes miedo? What are you afraid of? Okay. Number 6, ¿cuál leíste? Which one? ¿Cuál leíste? We're using cuál because we're talking about which one, a selection, but that noun is not actually present. Number 7, ¿qué restaurantes frecuentas? ¿Qué restaurantes frecuentas? Okay. Talking about choice, yes, but we're talking about fairly unrestricted choice. And there's no form of the verb ser. Number 8, which ones are your kids? ¿Cuáles son tus hijos? ¿Cuáles son tus hijos? Which is the best brand? Notice form of the verb ser es. ¿Cuál es la mejor marca? ¿Cuál es la mejor marca? Number 10, ¿cuál de todos te gusta más? Here we have the preposition de. So it calls for cuál. ¿Cuál de todos te gusta más? Okay. Okay, that concludes my presentation on the differences in the uses of the interrogatives que and cuál. I hope that you found it to be useful. It's going to be beneficial for you. As always, I welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. So please do take a second and leave a comment and let me know what you thought about this video lesson. All right, this has been Professor Jason. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you at the next lesson. Hasta pronto. Ciao.